This video is the first of a series focusing on the methods and tools of knowing, previously known as the ways of knowing, which forms part of the core element of the IB Theory of Knowledge or TOK course. In terms of the two most fundamental knowledge questions, what do we know and how do we know it, the methods and tools are focused towards the latter. One of the most important methods of knowledge acquisition is sense experience, encompassing the 5 senses with which we gain knowledge of the physical world around us: sight, taste, smell, touch and sound. In this video, I also aim to clarify the link between sense experience and perspectives, since the varied sense experiences we have are both a reason for and consequence of the varied perspectives and knowledge claims that exist with regard to the physical world. The first task you can see on the screen here links to sight and memory, whereby the students have a moment to look at a photo of an office scene. This visual is then assessed with a set of questions I ask the students when the photo is no longer visible. The second task links to the idea of a police suspect lineup. Here, students need to pick out the individual indicated as the bank robber. All the examples in this video are linked to sight specifically. And the only reason for this is that visual examples are well suited to a video seeking to develop the links between sense experience and the TOK course. However, the theoretical points developed are relevant to all the senses and sense experience as a whole. Concluding these starter activities, it's also worth mentioning that our sense experiences and memory don't record the world in the same way, for example, a camera does. Rather, our sense experience is influenced by a whole range of factors, including our worldview, past experiences, culture, even our emotions. At this point, I draw students' attention to the classic ambiguous images of the duck bunny and the young woman, old woman. The point is that sense experience is a result of the raw sense data, in this case the shapes and colours picked up by our eyes, and how that raw sense data is interpreted by our brains to result in perception. In the case of the duck bunny, when you see the duck, that's because you're understanding that raw sense data according to the idea of the concept of a duck you have in your mind-dependent schema. And when you see the bunny, you are understanding the same data according to the idea of a bunny. Therefore, sense experience is undeniably crucial in terms of how we understand the world. Yet this phenomena does not provide us with entirely neutral or purely objective knowledge. The following visual illusions, I think, explain a little bit further the role of interpretation in sense experience. The first image on the screen here highlights the importance of context. In this case, the 3 identical images of the man are seen in the context of the background building and pavement, which have been drawn with perspective. Therefore, we are judging the size of the man in the context of the whole image. This second image also focuses on the influence of context, in this case of shade and our expectation that shade darkens what we see. Square A and B are in fact exactly the same shade of grey. Thirdly, the Rubin vase illusion exemplifies the idea that we naturally highlight certain elements when looking at an image, like the figure, and pay less attention to the rest, the background. Another point is that as humans, we have a tendency to look for meaning when we have experiences of the world around us. And sometimes that meaning is not really in the world. Finally, the influence that expectations have over what we see has been the focus of various studies. In this case, English speakers familiar with the phrase on the screen will probably not see the second "the." This last point clearly links to the role of schema, in this case memory and past experiences, over what we perceive. Different theories of perception are expressions of the consequences of different conclusions of this analysis. These then inform a stance with regard to theories of knowledge, and I'll highlight 2 classics here: empiricism and rationalism. Common sense realism, or direct realism, asserts that reality, or the external world beyond our perception of it, is as it appears to us. In other words, appearances and reality are identical. Indirect realism, on the other hand, has it that there is a disconnect between the external world and our perceptions of it. Yet importantly, the external world does indeed exist and is a fundamental cause of the sense experiences we have. The advantage of indirect realism is that it accounts for the variations in perception, allowing for the influence of the mind in interpreting our raw sense data. The problem, however, is that that external world is in some way hidden behind a veil of perception. Therefore, can we ever arrive at certain knowledge with regard to the physical world? Phenomenalism responds to this problem by proposing a more radical solution, suggesting that since the pure nature of the external world is beyond the possibility of perception, then it makes no sense to say it resembles our experience of it, or even to claim it exists at all. Rather, the focus of our inquiry should stop at our perceptions, since these are all we can access. It's important to note that phenomenalists don't necessarily say the external world does not exist, but that our ability to say anything meaningful about it is impossible. As a final thought, scientific realism, having some similarities to indirect realism, posits that the external world does indeed exist, yet in a way that is markedly different from our perceptions of it. These differences are apparent in scientific explanations. For example, the walls of the room in which I am sitting appear to be solid and white, yet a theory of atoms suggests that they consist mostly of empty space and are colourless. Finally, to link some of these ideas regarding sense experience and theories of perception to a broader assessment of knowledge, empiricism and rationalism are two fundamental theories of knowledge which frame some of the chief considerations here. Both theories agree that knowledge results from a combination of sense experience and reason. In other words, raw sense data and the mind-dependent schema organizing this data. The difference between them is one of emphasis. Empiricists argue that sense experience is more important and fundamental to knowledge production, whereas rationalists argue that the mind is more critical in this process. To finish then, highlighting the key points. First, our senses are central to how we acquire knowledge of the world around us. Different people experience the world differently, suggesting perception results from the interaction of raw sense data organized and interpreted by mind-dependent schema. Different theories of perceptions adopt varying positions to explain what perception is and how this relates to or reflects an independent world external to our experience of it. And empiricism and rationalism both accept knowledge as a consequence of sense experience and reason, yet they differ in terms of which has a leading role in knowledge production.